What's going on with Contrapoints? Yeah, I'm gonna briefly touch on that as well, because I mean, I said this like a while back where I was like, listen, this is not for like any person. I said this on my Discord a while back, where I was like, now that it's becoming more like acceptable and appropriate for a lot of people who are terrified of their quote unquote brand being associated or tarnished in any capacity with like Israel Palestine stuff, you'll see a lot more people like openly reveal takes, okay, openly say what their points are. And I think, I mean, something I said back then, this was like months ago, was if you come out after like, 20 months of, or 18 months at the time, I think it was, of like genocide to like make a statement, and your statement revolves around like how all of these people that were correct from the start are actually evil and bad or whatever, and that your feelings really matter in this process. Like if you come out and do any of that like wishy-washy shit, or if you come out and do any of this like both sides are kind of bad type when you're talking about like free Palestine, the genocide that is happening, then I'm gonna talk about it, okay? And that's basically, it's sad to see, but that's basically what Contrapoints did, like to a T almost. Okay, and I like Contrapoints. I've never had any issues with her. I don't really care about like all the other controversies that she's been in or whatever. You know what I mean? She's, for those of you who don't know, Contrapoints is a bread tuber. She was one of the OG bread tubers. Like she would make these really long, well thought out YouTube video essays, bisexual lighting, all of that, right? And she had been, I guess, noticeably absent. I don't really run around being like, why is my favorite YouTuber not saying anything about this issue or that issue or whatever? I mean, it is odd when like you're a political content creator, or you have major political opinions be known, and you don't really say anything about like perhaps one of the most impactful global incidents, a genocide that is unfolding in real time. It is odd, but I never was like, why won't you say anything, right? And I guess people were doing that a lot, and so she did. She came out and like released something, not on Twitter, mind you, but instead on Reddit, which is, I guess, like a less hostile space to reveal this kind of thing. There are a multitude of different reasons as to why people don't speak out about the genocide that is unfolding in front of our eyes. For many content creators who like understand the violence that is happening, they might be worried about the bag, for example. For some others, they're worried about the saying something wrong and then being like ridiculed or bullied or attacked, which is part of the reason why they will just say, oh yeah, free Palestine, and then they move on, right? Or like they rarely ever engage in this kind of stuff, because it is supposed to be a third rail. It was considered the third rail of politics by design for a very long time, right? They don't want to get like, they don't want people to go after their advertisers. Why are people so afraid? What do you mean? Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. I've spent most of my professional career combating anti-Semitism, and still do to this day. And it's like not even a question. Like people will just immediately be like, he's an anti-Semite, he's a terrorist, take his money away, deplatform him, don't put him on any news outlets. Like, what the fuck? No one should watch him. Why do people watch him? Like people get really vicious. There are entire networks organized around like doing this kind of like horrible thing, right? They will turn people into pariahs, right? By design. That is the point. That is the purpose, right? You get put on a list, and then people will actively come after you to try to like ruin your livelihood. But in any case, that's like part of the reason why a lot of people are afraid of it, because it's like the real type of cancel culture, right? It's not like cancel culture because you like said something that was up when you were like a teenager, and now people are unearthing that and like yelling at you over it, like, but it's gonna go away in like a week. I'm talking like real cancel culture, like you're not allowed to, you get charged with terrorism like Kneecap did, or they won't let you advertise your band in the London metro stations like Kneecap did, or you get put on a list and then you have prominent civil rights groups like the ADL routinely coming after you in mainstream media and just like smearing you because who the fuck is going to say anything? Who's going to push back? You get your visas canceled. Like those are the real impactful, real consequential cancel culture shit, right? Not like a bunch of people on Twitter yelled at you for whatever you said back in the day. And I think that that's a real reason why a lot of people don't say anything. But Natalie is a smart person, like a much smarter, much better thought out person than these people that I'm talking about. She's not like a random influencer that otherwise does like makeup blogs or whatever. And that's the reason why she's like trying to avoid controversy, because she doesn't want to get her like Lush sponsorship taken away from her. This is a political essayist, right? So I guess, and I didn't like look too deeply into this at all, but I guess like the reason why she didn't say anything about this for a very long time was because, and by her own admission, it was because you won't like what she has to say. She was a PhD candidate in philosophy before YouTube. I know. It was just, I will say this much. As someone who really appreciates Contrapoints' perspective, as someone who has collaborated with her, as someone who's talked to her, someone who's met her, I will say I'm disappointed. Okay? It's I know that everyone will say, I told you so, whatever, but like it still sucks. Okay? It still sucks. And maybe some people will say, what's wrong with her response? She didn't say anything wrong, right? And I think she basically crafted a message as to why she had not spoken about this issue that much, with the exception of the limited times that she said stuff about it, was because she couched it in like a hyper focus of whatever the online left is doing. Okay? How can you be disappointed in her when she did a friendly collab with Hillary Clinton? Yeah, I didn't really care about that too much. Like, I didn't read too much into it. And I know people will say, well, she did a collaboration with Hillary Clinton. I think like that just spells that like someone is interested in pushing their platform further. That's what it could be. You know what I mean? I don't give a shit. You know? I don't think that's like, I don't know the extent of which her collaboration with Hillary Clinton looked like anyway. But BreadTube got a lot of people on the right track in the last 10 years. I understand why people will be disappointed. Can't be bothered with people post-game playcasting. Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like, I think that she had a lot of impactful videos for a lot of people. Like, I'm not going to undermine that. I'm not going to discount that. It's like literally what I do. You know, I try to convince people not to be their old selves, right? And I think if someone has been impactful in a lot of people's lives in that regard, it just hurts to see. But in any case, I think this is her real opinion. This is just her true opinion, and she tried to couch it in an intellectual way. But I do think that it's a very cowardly way to deal with something that is so awful, so black and white. Not a lot of things are black and white in this world. Genocide is one of those things that's literally black and white. Chattel slavery and genocide, two things that are black and white. Okay, straight up. So any sort of like, oh, I don't know, what about the other side's opinions? What about the other side's feelings on the matter? Like, you are trying to intellectualize your biases in the wrong direction on this issue. Okay? That's it. It's a super simple situation. Masquerading this as like a conflict that puts progressive people who care about Palestinian emancipation against Jews is unironically a anti-Semitic thing to do. It's just a straightforward anti-Semitic thing to do, because this is not about Jews versus Palestinians. That's what the media wants you to think. That's what the media wants you to focus on. And I think like it is especially dangerous to make this conflation right now when the overwhelming majority of Americans and the overwhelming majority of people in the Western world have very clearly recognized the reality that this is an unsustainable and truly immoral situation. So then it's basically like associating ISIS to Islam, but you're doing it in a way where you want to be woke and anti-Islamophobia almost. But yeah, I'll get to it. I'll start off with that, I guess. It's as you guys know, I normally shy away from talking about whatever is percolating in the takeosphere, right? I don't really talk about like the quote unquote drama and things of that nature, but there is one exception, and that is when someone has a political perspective or a take or something, especially as it pertains to this issue. That's usually when I explain the shit drama. It's not like, I don't think this is quote unquote drama is what I'm trying to say. I think this is beyond that. I think this is political discourse. And let me see if I can find it real quick. Let me pull up the statement. Yeah. Dick Sertonox posts, YouTuber Contrapoints has posted her full take. And I'm just going to go through this. YouTuber Contrapoints has posted her full take on Israel to Reddit. Okay. All right, let's open the image in a new tab because there's so much happening here. There's a lot. It's an effort post. Okay. Contrapoints, user Contrapoints. And I think like it's significant that she posted it on Reddit rather than on Twitter, because I think she knows like the environment. Like, so many leftists feel betrayed because I haven't made a video on Palestine. Do they actually want a Contrapoints video on Palestine? Will they be happy if I get in the bath and pour milk on a mannequin of Benjamin Netanyahu? No. I have posted about Gaza occasionally and have quietly given money to Palestinian aid organizations. But I think that what leftists really want is for me to join their chorus of anger. They sense some hesitation on my part and are judging me very harshly on my presumed opinions. I'd rather be judged on my actual opinions. So here they are. Is Israel committing a genocide in Gaza? Yes. Do I oppose it? Yes. Do I feel angry about it? Yes. I also feel a lot of other things. I think if she had basically stopped it here, even here, this is like kind of silly to be like, look, I'm a content creator. I talk about a litany of different issues. I've done all of this stuff. Is Israel doing a genocide in Gaza? Yes. Do I oppose it? Yes. Is Israel an apartheid state? Yes. Free Palestine. Boom. It's over. No controversy. Okay. No issue whatsoever. Like, why is this issue being treated as though it is it's annoying or it's inconveniencing? You know what I mean? Like, why is this? Like, would we say this about the Holocaust? I mean, plenty of people, I'm sure, they didn't have the full knowledge of the Holocaust when it was happening, but I'm sure plenty of people, if they did, would have a similar opinion back then, right? But it's just so incredibly disingenuous. I have the other half of her statement as well. Don't worry. I have it all. And what's frustrating about this entire thing, and I mentioned this before, and I repeated myself last night, and I know everyone was like, oh, is this about ContraPoints? It's like, it's not. It's not just about ContraPoints. This is for everyone. This statement is universal, okay? So before I get to reading the rest of this, the but, and then the post but part of ContraPoint's statement, okay? Here's what my opinion is. This has not changed for the past 2 years at this point. If you are like me, a spoiled child of America, okay? If you live in the heart of empire and your tax dollars are contributing to unlimited bloodshed in the global south, but especially in Palestine right now, especially in Gaza right now, and your focus after 20 months of live streamed Holocaust of men, women, and children in Gaza, the complete and utter annihilation, death and destruction in Gaza is still on your personal feelings, how you feel about it, how the personal hysterics that you have developed around this issue because of the takes that you see online. Okay, if you continue to center yourself, and you are just like me, perhaps the most spoiled person on the planet, living in the United States of America automatically qualifies as the most privileged people on the planet. Okay, anything beyond unconditional support to the Palestinian emancipatory movement, anything beyond unconditional support to the victims of genocide is ridiculous, okay? It's been 20 months. It's been 20 months. We've all seen the death. We've all seen the destruction. Stop trying to rationalize away and stop trying to normalize this death and destruction. It's not normal. People recognize that it's not normal. And our institutions are seemingly immovable. And yet we still persist. And yet we still continue to push them with the hopes that we can enact some sort of positive change. Hopefully one day get some semblance of justice. But if you're not going to do all that, if you can't if you can't see Palestinians as humans, but simply victims of circumstance, okay? Simply just a group of people that you don't want to think about as people, as human beings, okay? Speak for yourself. I had a horror show of a childhood. Man, shut up. Shut up. You're doing it right now, okay? What I'm talking about is our birthplace, okay? As a part of growing up in the United States of America, you are automatically luckier than a Palestinian child. This is ridiculous. It's not even a question. You would never say this about a Jewish child that was sent to Auschwitz. Okay? The only reason why you feel like you can say this is because something in your brain is stopping you from recognizing these people as human beings. That's it. That is at the heart of this controversy. Okay? If you try to intellectualize why Palestinians are suffering, if you do all of this, instead of just like looking at this and seeing right from wrong, you're worse than like half of these conservatives, man. Half of these conservatives who are like genuinely ruthless people, okay? Incredibly selfish people. Even they, like I know someone, okay, that is related to a person who was at January 6th. That's how much of a MAGA booster they are. And they find what Israel is doing to be unconscionable. They're evangelical. They grew up with the mentality that Jews are special class people that must get Israel so that we can trigger the rapture. There are people like that that have seen the fathers carrying their daughters and their sons in plastic bags, the remains of them, and that's it. For them, it's over. How can you look at all of this as in destruction? Okay, Cutie, what are you guys talking about? Cutie, this is not drama. I'm just giving you some serious shit. Cutie is Mormon also, okay? What the Cutie's not evangelical. Anyway, or former Mormon. In any case, like this is such a uniquely violent circumstance, okay? We've never had an instance where like we have seen the Holocaust unfold in real time. That has never happened, okay? In the past, we've had glimpses of it, you know what I mean? Illegal incursions, death, destruction, violence, but never to this degree and never in broad daylight in real time. Except the Holocaust? No, the Holocaust is actually exactly the original Holocaust is exactly what I'm talking about. Are you kidding me? There was no internet, and half of the people outside of the German occupied territories were completely oblivious to what was going on in the death camps. Some Jews were suspicious. Some people that were being shipped to the Holocaust, to the concentration camps, were suspicious, and understandably so. They took action. The partisans did, right? But for the most part, people were not this tuned in to everything that was going on until the camps were liberated. Nazi propaganda, just like Israeli propaganda, was fairly strong at the time. And there were also obviously technological limitations that stopped people from figuring things out. There were surveillance reports that came out. Like I remember reading something about the British spy agencies initially writing reports on these death camps. And it was so violent. It was so unimaginably violent. People didn't even believe it. Okay? They were like, there's no way that's real. And in spite of all of that, the Nazis also made a fake, sanitized version of a camp that they brought the German Red Cross to, which was Nazi-affiliated, and then the International Red Cross Association to. These are all very famous incidents. Theresienstadt. Did I say it right? Probably not. Anyway, I'm moving away from the broader point that I was making, okay? Yes, a lot of these incidents might come across as familiar to you because that's precisely what Israel has been doing. They've been playing the Nazi-style Holocaust playbook in perpetuity, playing itself out every single day. The only unique instance here is that we get to see the people that are victims to it in real time, in broad daylight. We hear their cries. We see them as human beings. There is more information on this stuff than ever before. But in any case, as I was saying, when all of this is unfolding and everyone is aware of it, if you're going to come out and be like, I was quiet for the past 20 months, but now I have a statement and it's wishy-washy and it's both sides focusing on like leftists online, then spare yourself and everyone else the agita and just keep quiet. Just stay quiet. There's no reason to just come out. There's no honor in coming out like this to be like, here's why I didn't say anything. Okay? On the other hand, on the other side of this, if you want to know my opinion on this, and I've said it before, and I've said this about ICE protests as well, anti-ICE protests as well. I said this about people who want to fight back against the Trump administration now. Okay? If you get over yourself and you get over your own like moral hangups or anything like that, and then you support the Palestinian emancipatory movement, and that's it, and you say free Palestine, it don't matter what I said in the past, I'm here, I've learned my lessons, I've changed my mind. Or even if you just say, hey guys, I'm pro-Palestine, I've been pro-Palestine, I just haven't really spoken about it, whatever, it doesn't matter. As soon as you do that, I'm with you. I and many others in this movement will welcome you with open arms. Okay? They'll always do that because we need the numbers. Okay? There is no other way to fight back against this. This is the only way to do it, is to keep up the pressure. And you need more people from every different walk of life, from every different background, regardless of what their other opinions are. If they're united on this issue and they're protesting, then they're good with me. Okay? And I've always maintained this position. But if they cynically say that they're, pro-Palestine only to just like try to criticize the people who've been there for a very long time, only to go out of your way to just be like, I'm pro-Palestine. Okay, now that I've said it's a genocide, can we really talk about what really matters? My own feelings and how annoying the left is? Like, then you're just saying that as a talking point just so you can do this other shit. It's insane. And everyone can see it. Like, what do you mean? What are you doing? Trying to carve out a little space for yourself and others like you who are, they think it's a genocide, but no one should resist against it. They think it's a genocide, but no one should speak out against it. They think it's a genocide, but no one should protest against it. Like, what kind of position is this? Then you don't think it's a genocide because in your framework, you don't believe it. You don't believe yourself. Okay? And the last point that I made was most of the liberal Zionists that were screaming after October 7th, okay, that were demanding unconditional loyalty and support to the apartheid state, they either became psychotic Kahanists, okay, like Meir Kahan, or they became anti-Zionists. Like, there are examples of liberal Zionists that months after October 7th turned into anti-Zionists. Maybe initially they were like very passionate, very upset at Hamas. But since then, they've realized that, yeah, objectively, what Israel is doing is a genocide. This is unconscionable. This is the evolution of Zionism. And they've recognized it on their own, and they've changed their minds. Or the last category is liberal Zionists who just stay quiet because they can read the room. There are examples of people that I have admired, okay, that, for example, I have a difference in opinion on with respect to Israel's apartheid, with respect to the genocide that Israel is doing, who can't get themselves to say that this is Israel's problem. They say it's Benjamin Netanyahu's war. They say, Israel is a right-wing place, is a fascist place, but like also simultaneously seemingly make excuses, right? There are old liberal Zionists who I admire. Bernie Sanders is one of them. But Bernie Sanders, regardless of his difference in opinion on this issue, does not make this the singular force of his political convictions. He understands that there are people who are far more radical than he is, far more invested in the emancipation of Palestinians, and he never sits there and goes, "F you for doing that." Okay? He doesn't do the cynical, this is anti-Semitism, this is like extreme anti-Semitism, I don't agree with this. He doesn't do that. He doesn't get in the way. As a matter of fact, he endorses people that have a more radical position than he does. I don't know what's going on in his mind, but as long as someone, regardless of their difference in opinion on this issue, okay, But as long as someone is not getting in the way of other people who are doing their very best, trying whatever they can, when everything seems so hopeless, in the face of unimaginable cruelty, when someone is doing, when someone who has a disagreement, yeah, Brad Lander is another example, when someone who has a disagreement with all that, who doesn't make that the focal point, the central point of their politics, and doesn't stand in opposition of those who have passed their framework and sees them as allies, then I have respect for them. I, on the other hand, have no respect for people who are, at this point especially, still both sidesing this okay? That's crazy, man. What are we doing? You can't try to punish people for being correct early and still present yourself in a progressive posture. It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. So let's see what she said. As I said, is Israel committing a genocide in Gaza? Yes. Do I oppose it? Yes. Do I feel angry about it? Yes. But I also feel a lot of other things. No need to say any of this stuff, honestly. One, doom. She also presented this Reddit post like one of her videos, which is so crazy. Like with the paragraph titles and everything. The week after October 7, it was clear the mood among the Israeli leaders and civilians was overwhelmingly kill or be killed. Existential panic and unstoppable lust for revenge. It reminded me of the U.S. after 9/11. There was no reasoning or protesting them out of it. Nor was it politically feasible for the U.S. to withdraw aid to Israel on a time frame that would make a difference. That's just objectively incorrect. And it makes me feel like she doesn't know enough about this issue. Because there's only two options here. Either she's cynically misinforming people, or she just genuinely is oblivious to this reality. And I think it's the second. Okay? The idea that, well, they're just bloodthirsty, not much we can do about it, is one thing, which is also crazy. Like just because a foreign entity, a foreign government is experiencing bloodlust doesn't mean that we can't protest that. Is nuts. Okay? But beyond that, Contrapoints is who said this. But beyond that, the notion that it was not politically feasible for the U.S. to withdraw aid to Israel on a time frame that would make a difference is wrong. If that was the case, Biden would not have flown to Israel a week after October 7 and did the now known as the bear hug strategy with Benjamin Netanyahu, and then accelerated $14 billion in weapons transfers to Israel with haste. It's just wrong. It is just wrong information. You are incorrect. Okay? You're just wrong about this. If this is the genuine logical framework, if these are the underlying premises that you are building your opinion off of, you're just wrong. Okay? This is not even I'm not even making a moral statement here. I'm saying you are wrong. 100%. Since October 7, America is responsible for 70% of all munitions that Israel has deployed both on Gaza and all munitions that have been deployed to defend Israel in their defense systems. 70%. The United States of America is the country that keeps Israel as violent as it wants to be. Israel is our attack dog in the region. It is ridiculous. If Israel was not reliant on our endless support, both political cover at the UN and on the international stage, and also, political cover from sanctions that would broadly be sent to any other country that was doing this level of ethnic cleansing, this much in broad daylight with Western munitions. Okay, we give it political cover, we give it protection, but most importantly, we give it directly the weapons that they use on the Palestinians. If that wasn't the case, Israel would not have a multi-billion-dollar propaganda network that steadily focuses on changing Western societal attitudes towards Israel in a positive way all the time. They would not have this sophisticated web of influence in perpetuity since the inception of the state of Israel. It's ridiculous. Okay? Why are they spending all that money then? For fun? Of course not. They're spending it because they also have to. They recognize that propaganda is an absolute necessity for this continued support. And this continued support is an absolute must for Israel's continuation as a violent apartheid regime, one that is now doing genocide. So that's just objectively wrong. It would have required replacing most of Congress and overturning decades of bipartisan strategy and diplomacy. Even in the best case scenario, it would have taken years, so there was a sense of futility, but worse. 2. Misery. The leftist pro-Palestine movement quickly decided that their primary goal was not merely opposition to the genocide, but opposition to Zionism in general. Yes, of course. The leftist anti-fascist movement quickly decided that their primary goal was not merely the opposition to the Wehrmacht, but it was, or opposition to the Holocaust, but it was actually opposition to Nazism in general. That is, opposition to the existence of Germany as an Aryan state. And here they decided to draw the line separating decent people from genocidal fascists, which had the following consequences. It shrunk the coalition. Zionist is a very broad category. Most Jews are Zionists. Anyone who supports a two-state solution is a Zionist. So here it is. Again, wrong. Wrong. This is the Will Stancil tweet from October 8th. The Matt Iglesias tweet and the Will Stancil tweet from like October 8, 2023, saying the left will never survive this. What has taken place on October 7 is so horrifyingly violent that the DSA is over. The left will never survive this. There will never be a coalition that cares about Palestine ever again. And as a matter of fact, anyone who supports this is supporting October 7, and therefore there will never be a left movement in this country ever again. That's what they were saying. That's what they were saying almost 2 years ago. Look at the situation now. The Palestinian emancipatory movement has never had this much support in the United States of America. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. Also wrong. The notion that these people that were more knowledgeable on the issue of Palestine, on who was being oppressed and who was doing the oppression, and the ideological reasons for why Israel was doing this oppression, this exterminationist policy, as a direct consequence of Zionism being an ethno-religious supremacist ideology that revolves around the extermination of the indigenous population, the otherizing and the dehumanization of all Palestinians, Christian, Muslim alike, and all Arabs in general. The monolithization of all Arabs as a parasitic force is identical to the Übermensch mentality of Nazi Germany. It is the same exact type of fascist policymaking. It is the same exact type of fascist ideology. So for someone who has written extensively about the alt-right and the Nazis and whatnot, I am shocked at how someone like Contrapoints, who is very well read on this stuff, cannot put two and two together. It makes no sense. Okay? And it didn't shrink the coalition at all. So you're just objectively wrong about that. When you look at the Democratic Party's base of support, I mean, the Harry Enton CNN Holy Toledo video comes to mind. Harry Enton points to Democratic Party support for Israel and Israelis shifting more than 60 points in the direction away from being pro-Israel to being pro-Palestine by 42 points. Used to be pro-Israel by 17 points. And then post-October 7, when this ethnic cleansing campaign accelerated and everyone could see it, it turned into a plus 43-point swing in the direction of Palestinians. So this coalition has grown, and I see it. I've mentioned this over and over again. We talk about this off camera as well with other people who have been talking about Palestinian emancipation for decades, myself included. Like, I have seen this environment, the information environment, and the previous methods of like squashing any sort of criticism of Israel go away. It withered away. I myself am living and breathing proof, a political commentator who is able to speak convincingly on Palestinian emancipation since October 8, 2023, without being utterly destroyed. You have hundreds of thousands of people in European capitals taking to the streets, demanding an end to this bloodshed. This is unheard of. Unheard of. Something that happened quietly over the past 10 years, that the thing you're supposed to say about Israel, Palestine, and progressive circles shifted from a two-state solution message to a binationalism message, which has greatly increased intra-left coalition tension. This is on October 13th, 2023. When the spectrum of opinion ranged from stridently pro-Israel but pays lip service to the two-state solution to fired up about Israeli human rights abuses and the need for a Palestinian state, it's easy for people who don't really care, most people, to fudge it. Once you raise the stakes for what counts as sympathizing with Palestinians to the level of from the river to the sea, you generate a much more polarized debate that can't be fudged. A question that I find generally interesting in politics is, when does it make sense to try to deliberately polarize an issue? It's not never, but it's also not always. And I think the practical upshot of this particular polarization dynamic is going to be bad for Palestinians. Note, for example, that Israel-Palestine is the only issue I can think of on which Joe Biden has positioned himself to the right of Barack Obama. He was wrong, objectively. He was wrong on this. But it's especially crazy to me to be wrong on this 20 months after the fact. Matt Iglesias is always wrong, okay? He's always the first to be wrong. How are you going to be the last to be wrong? I never thought that there was a position worse than Matt Iglesias is on this issue. Yeah, Matt Iglesias is always wrong. Fork found in the kitchen. So it did not actually shrink the coalition, okay? Zionist is a very broad category, yeah, by design. And there's a lot of lies being told about what Zionism is. Also, by design, this is the reason why Zionism is oftentimes in the media covered as like, do you care as a Jew about the state of Israel? But you know what's never talked about? Because I don't know why, well, I do know why we center this conversation around Jews, okay? But there is a far larger force of Zionism around the globe, throughout history, and certainly in the United States of America, that is far more consequential and has outsized control in American politics than Jews and their opinion on Israel. It's evangelical Zionism. Kufi is the largest donation group to the settlement project to Israel in general in this country, Christians United for Israel. It is evangelical Christians that are the force. This is why I have always said that even if every single American Jew tomorrow turned around and said, I'm an anti-Zionist, America's foreign policy and its association with Israel would not change, especially in the short term. Because America's investment in Israel has nothing to do with Jews as a special category or as a special class. It has everything to do with material interest. Okay? Now, having said that, has there been a lot of influence peddling in the process over the course of the past 77, 78 years? Of course there has been. Is there an ideological component to the zealotry demonstrated by a lot of Christian Zionists, Jewish Zionists alike? Absolutely. But that's not the driving force of this allegiance. That's not the driving force of this partnership. That's not the reason why, when USS Liberty happens, like the American government's like, oh, don't say anything, That's not the reason why Israel's a special status client state, okay? It is the fact that Israel is a unsinkable aircraft carrier with its own espionage facilities. It is America's very own special attack dog that it can always control in a resource-rich region, rich both in oil, but also incredibly important for global trade, okay, with the Suez Canal. That's it. That's precisely why Joe Biden said in the 90s, if Israel didn't exist, we'd make one. He was right. He was honest about America's framework on this issue. It was politically infeasible. What is the pathway that takes us from the present situation to the dissolution of Israel as a Jewish state? I don't see how this could happen without either a total internal collapse of Israeli society or else, nuclear war. As usual, leftists have championed a doomed cause. And at this point, it's like it turns into just your own personal, incredibly petty, incredibly self-centered attitude about what you think the online left is doing. It turns into just like looking at an issue that is black and white and saying, well, it's the worst crime that you can ever do, genocide, but the leftists are just like being crazy about it. Like, this is just your stupid gripes with leftist people online and what you perceive as like the broader movement, the broader pro-Palestinian movement. Okay? The internal collapse of Israeli society is going to happen. It is inevitable. because it is built on the foundation of ethnic cleansing. Okay, it is propped up. It doesn't have the chattel slavery and the colonial extraction that the American government had, where it could have completed its ethnic cleansing as America did to the indigenous population here, and then continue on with its imperial project. Okay, Israel cannot maintain this without unlimited support from the United States of America, whereas the United States of America is capable, or was capable of reaching a point of independence so it could continue dominating the world. Okay, and I believe that this is precisely the reason why, like, people chirp about this stuff, to be like, don't talk about the inconsistencies, don't talk about the inequities, don't talk about the apartheid, don't talk about the dissolution of Zionism or the Zionist state. Anyway, dangerous ambiguities. The vagueness of Zionism as a political Satan enables all kinds of rhetorical abuses. The dangers of Nazism as a political statement enables all kinds of rhetorical abuses. Okay? It's like, this is an argument that you're launching here is virtually identical to the Boers and their existence in apartheid South Africa, the white South Africans that wanted to maintain an apartheid. Okay? Like, it's ridiculous. It's like saying this about Nazi Germany. The dangers of developing enmity towards the Germans who support the Nazi regime. What the is this? It enables all kinds of rhetorical abuses. On the one hand, right-wing Israelis hold up all anti-Zionist protests as existentially threatening and inherently anti-Semitic. On the other hand, there is a long history of anti-Semites using the term Zionist in a deliberately equivocal ways, Zog, etc. Anti-Semites are happy for the opportunity to misappropriate the now popular anti-Zionist label to legitimize their agenda, and many people are not informed enough about anti-Semitism to recognize when this is happening. These problems are mutually reinforcing. You know what's crazy about this? This isn't wrong, okay? But what's wrong about this is to slam this in a conversation where you're supposed to be making this distinction, but from the perspective of someone who is not a Zionist. Okay? People like myself, we do this every day. There are so many much better read, much better activists out there on this issue that make this distinction every day. The difference is, we see Muslims and Palestinians as human beings, and I think if you have this statement, if you can just say, well, these people are being slaughtered, but you don't see them as human beings. You don't see them as full-blown human beings. Deep down inside, you have to feel like they kind of deserve it, and they should quietly just go away because they're ruining your day by simply existing in the direction of Israeli bombs and not quietly perishing away, but instead speaking out against their demise. Okay? Paragraph 3, dread. The online left has spent the last 20 months distributing hundreds of photos and videos of dead Palestinian children. The main effect of this, and this is the worst part about this, by the way, the main effect of this has been to create a population of people in a constant state of blood-boiling rage with no consequential political outlet. I fear this may be worse than useless. Anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are conceptually not the same, and conflating them is dangerous. But in practice, the way Israel is perceived does seep out into attitudes towards Jews in general. I don't think the Jews who feel isolated and wary of the current atmosphere are simply hysterical or hallucinating. Yes, there's a communal trauma and hypervigilance. Yes, there's disingenuous right-wing ghouls dismissing and censoring all criticism of Israel in the pretext of fighting anti-Semitism. But there's also a valid fear of historical anti-Semitism patterns recurring, and that fear gives power to the right-wing Zionist claim that only Israel can keep Jews safe. Does this mean Israel should not be criticized or sanctioned? Absolutely not. But it's something I don't want to risk contributing to, if not outweighed by tangible benefits, so I approach the issue cautiously. This is the absolute worst possible thing you can say, because it is the most wokeified, most intellectualized version of what Benjamin Netanyahu says when he says, these are telegenically dead children. And you know who's actually distributing the photos of hundreds of dead Palestinian children? Palestinians are. It's not actually the left that's distributing those photos. It's the Palestinians themselves that are speaking out on their own genocide, on their own ethnic cleansing. So to sit there and be like, this is just the woke left being woke by really pushing people to get angry about this documented genocide every single day is a psychotic thing to say. This is the worst thing that she mentions in this entire. It's not only wrong, once again, wrong on the facts. It is not the online left, because the online left is not in Gaza. Palestinians are in Gaza. They are the ones who are showing their own conditions. And to treat this as like a simple nuisance, something that is causing your day to be worse, something that's giving you blood-boiling rage, and then where does that rage go? Against Jews? Like, what kind of statement is this? This is the most politically correct version of saying this is Pallywood that I've ever seen. It is an unimaginably freakish thing to say. Incredibly disappointing. Like, what's the alternative? You see these harrowing images, and you don't look at them and feel some type of way. You don't actually try to get others to also feel angry and resentful towards what Israel is doing, which is genocide, and our contributions to said genocide as Americans. Crazy. A shameful statement. I cannot believe that Natalie typed this out, read it through, made sure there were no grammatical errors, and then thought that this was good to publish. It really truly reveals how little the people in her immediate orbit give a singular shred of about the lives of Palestinians. Clearly, there was not a single person that could have turned around and said, hey, you know how you said like conflating Israel with Judaism is dangerous? Maybe just hyper-focus on that aspect and talk about the cynical conflation being crafted by both liberal Zionists, and also the Nazis alike. I fear this may be worse than useless. We already talked about this. Yes, there's communal trauma and hypervigilance. Yes, there's disingenuous right-wing ghouls dismissing and censoring all criticism. But it's something I don't want to risk contributing to. It's not outweighed by the tangible benefits. Yeah, I'm not going to contribute to anger and resentment towards the genocidal apartheid state of Israel unless there is an immediate solution. What is this if not cowardice? It also presents the issue as people who are pro-Palestine against Jews, okay? It's the long way to be this smug. It's the long way to take this like vapid, self-centered, incredibly smug attitude while talking about how, you know, every time you're doing, you know, activism or what you think is activism, when you go out to the streets and you protest against Israel, or you say Zionism is fascist, which it literally is, right? Every time you say the truth about Israel, every time you say the truth about Zionism as a political ideology, okay, as an ethno-supremacist, exterminationist political ideology, you're actually harming the Jews. Jews have been around for thousands of years. Zionism has been around for 78. Well, longer than 78, but Israel's been around for 78. Zionism has been around for a little bit longer than 78. The f*** do you mean? This conflation was deliberate, and it was a relatively new phenomenon. The notion that you would also come out with this statement after 20 months, hundreds of thousands of dead Palestinians. Every single day we see 50 Palestinians being shot at that are starving at a American Israel backed fake charity scheme, because they've cut off all aid distribution into the Strip so they can do perfidy and use aid as a military mechanism to further displace and to further kill the Palestinian population, to make it impossible to survive in the Strip, so they can inevitably move them to concentration camps in Rafah and then move them away from the Palestinian lands into the Sinai Peninsula or wherever, probably the UAE. The idea that like this is the idea that this had anything to do with Judaism is psychotic, but to say that 20 months in is extra crazy. It's literally this, but with better language. Hi, someone with heavy food sensory issues here. Frosted mini wheats are one of the only things I can actually consume regularly and not get sick from. Guilting people who can't support boycotts is ableist as fuck. Y'all aren't ready for that conversation. It's like, yeah, basically, but it's a far more severe situation because it's about genocide. Like centering yourself in the amidst this like ongoing genocide, and your own feelings and your fears, your hysterical fears that you have cultivated, instead of correcting people who have these hysterical fears that they represent, that they demonstrate on a regular fucking basis, and try to convince them, as your job is to convince people when they're wrong, right? If you are a essayist on YouTube, this is your job. Your job is to literally tell people that they might be a little crazy, or in the nicest ways possible, nudge them in the appropriate direction. That's what I do. That's what you're supposed to be doing as well. Aren't you supposed to be de-radicalizing people away from the alt-right, from Nazi-style ideologies? That's what I've been doing. What happened to you? Where did you go? There is no difference here. Bitterness. There have been so many controversies, some of it like intra-community, with respect to like takes that Contrapoints has had throughout her career that I have never really paid too much attention to. You know, I have not. I've thought that she is an overall positive figure that plays a formative role in crafting lengthy, visually appealing arguments that can reach a lot of people and change their minds. Okay? Contra has never de-radicalized an alt-righter. Her messaging has been exclusively for the social media obsessed libs who singularly care about domestic social issues. I don't think that's the case. I think there are probably even people in here who have seen seen trans existence in a totally different light as a consequence of watching her videos. I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's correct at all. I think like she has been able to change people's minds on certain issues. She's played a role in this. Okay? Just as I have, just as other people have. I was transphobic as a trans woman and her viz changed my life. I'm really hurt by how bad she is on this topic. Contrapoints radicalized my ex who liked Ben Shapiro. Yeah, no, I think she has played a decent role in this. Much of the online left spent all of 2024 single-mindedly focused on Palestine and the complicity of the Democratic politicians in sending aid to Israel. This campaign had the following effects. 0 Palestinian lives were saved. Not one fewer bomb or bullet was fired by the IDF. It may have slightly contributed to the re-election of Trump, guaranteeing that the U.S. will put no diplomatic pressure on Netanyahu for at least 4 years, and making protests against Israel much riskier and less effective. Trump is also, incidentally, a menace to me and basically everyone I care about. A perfectly enlightened being would feel no bitterness about this, but I do. It's just so... I mean, this is so incredibly self-centered. It's crazy. And not because I'm like centering this around what she's saying, which is trans issues and how much worse they're getting under Donald Trump as opposed to Joe Biden, even though I think plenty of trans people would disagree with that as well, saying that a lot of these anti-trans initiatives kickstarted under Joe Biden and Trump has just simply accelerated it, reaching its logical conclusion. But not only that, but especially on the issue of Israel, this is even more pertinent to the discussion. She is completely incorrect on this, not on the trans issue side, but she's completely incorrect on what she is saying about, one, the singular focus of the left. At least here, a lot of people would say that I was singularly focused on Palestine. It was not the case, okay? There were a litany of criticisms that I had about the Kamala campaign and a litany of criticisms I had about the Joe Biden administration, okay? Gaza was certainly an important part of this because it's a genocide, okay? But it is crazy that, like, there is no logic here because you should be mad at the people in power. You should be mad at Kamala Harris and Joe Biden for wanting to continue this genocide, even if it was politically infeasible for them to do so, even if continuing this genocide actually played a role in her losing the election to an incompetent fascist piece of shit. The idea that the genocide protesters, the anti-genocide protesters are wrong and not the Democratic Party that looked at a 75-25 issue in that moment that signified perhaps the most significant problem with the Kamala Harris campaign, which was not cutting ties with the Biden administration. Not just on Gaza, but on numerous different policies, because Biden was incredibly unpopular, immensely unpopular. He was old. He was decrepit. He was a beacon of a dying empire, a dying party that had fallen out of favor. And Kamala Harris said, I'm not going to do anything different. She could have been a fresh new face, and she did not do that. The real analysis here is not that the people are wrong for seeing these horrifying images every day and responding in the way that every normal human being with a conscience should respond. Okay? The real anger and resentment should be, how the did the Democrats not care about all of this death and destruction and the understandable resentment that was brewing organically in the base? How did they not even cynically, in a cold and calculated, heartless manner, not take advantage? I can't believe I'm using these terms, but like not even take advantage of the ongoing issue and present yourself as anti-war, anti-genocide. Even if you didn't care about the dead, charred children of Palestine, you could have simply used this as an opportunity to cut your ties with the Biden administration that was a dead weight. It was an anchor around your neck. It was criminal negligence. They did not care, okay? They did not care enough. They were too predisposed with trying to win with their own method, with their own strategy, that they refused to see that this issue had changed forever. Sending Bill Clinton to Dearborn to talk about Judea and Samaria. Sending Richie Torres to Dearborn. I had these conversations with people who are connected to the Biden administration. If you recall, I did the Pod Johns. I did Pod Save America before the election and after the election. If you recall, every single thing that I brought up that the Kamala Harris campaign was doing that was wrong before the election became the major focal point of how they lost the election. Running around with Liz Cheney, refusing to let a Palestinian who was in the Democratic Party and is still in the Democratic Party speak at the DNC. Incredible, incredible failures. Failure after failure. Saying you're going to do the most lethal military. Saying you're going to be more militant at the border than the Trump administration actually is. They're not sincere about their interest in destroying all Latinos that live on U.S. soil. It's not like this was impossible to see. There were plenty of dumbasses, myself included, that saw it from a million miles away. So the real resentment should be directed at the people in power that refused to listen, that refused to abide by the principles of the democratic process where our electeds are supposed to represent our interests. And in a situation where it's 75-25, I mean, what more can you ask for? It was a genocide that started in an election campaign, during an election season, during an election year. Elections are supposed to be a pressure valve for people not to revolt because they feel like they have a say in this process. And the Democratic Party's refusal to hear the cries of its own base of support showed so many Americans that this is not a real democratic process at all, which is the truth, but, you know. People probably care more about inflation and social issues more than foreign policy. That's not true. That is not true. This was a major, major problem. Okay? That's not how campaigns are run. This is not how elections are run. Of course people cared about inflation. Okay? Kamala Harris had no good solutions to that either, with the exception of grocery prices, limiting grocery prices. That was a banger campaign policy that she presented that she packed up very quickly, even though it was her most popular policy. I covered it extensively. Okay? But if you want to look at this not as simply Gaza, but from a more holistic perspective, Gaza is yet another glaringly obvious representation of Kamala Harris's inability and disinterest in cutting ties with the anchor that was around her neck, the Biden administration. The very fact that she was presented as an alternative in this unceremonious, truly unique, unprecedented way should have been the major reason as to why she has to quickly cut ties with the administration she was a part of and utilize the limited amount of influence and power she has as the vice president at the time to make some changes, to give assurances to the American public that she will be different. It is crazy. The idea that foreign policy is in America especially is separate from domestic policy is stupid, because every single dollar spent on a bomb, spent on a rocket, spent on rockets that Israel deploys on the Palestinian population is a dollar that could go back to you. It could go back to your roads. It's a dollar that could be spent educating your kids. It's a dollar that could be spent building schools, factories, fixing the roads, building better infrastructure. So make no mistake, it is a lie that people say when they say, oh, foreign policy is a separate thing. No, of course it's not a separate thing. They want you to think it's a separate thing. They want you to think that these things are not directly connected to one another. That is by design. Trump is also incidentally a menace to me and everyone I care about. None of this is the fault of Palestinians, of course, who are overwhelmingly the victims here. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Natalie, for saying the Palestinians are overwhelmingly the victims here. I hope that someday American policy will shift in their favor, and I will continue to support that cause. TLDR, I see the situation as bleak, intractable, extremely divisive, and devoid of any element that could be appropriately transformed into political entertainment. That's why I haven't made a video about it. Hopefully it goes without saying that these are just my thoughts. I'm sure other bread tubers, in air quotes, have different opinions. So that was their take. And of course, when this unfolded on the timeline, everyone lost their minds, partially because Contrapoints is a trans woman, so obviously anything that a trans person says gets amplified a million times over by transphobes and you know, everyone else, of course. So there is that. But what I don't understand about the entertainment part of this is that, are you doing entertainment when you talk about trans issues? Is this not an existential issue for you? When you make a video trying to convert people, trying to change people's minds about trans existence, is that simply entertainment? I don't think it's entertainment. There is an entertainment component to what I do. I see that. I understand that. But it serves the larger interest that I have in getting people to change their minds.